Welcome to Thursday, Secular Soapbox Day here on the Skeptic Haven Network. I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Today I'll be joined by my favorite co-host, Apostacie, and tonight's special guest is a little-known, up-and-coming podcaster, the host of The Thinking Atheist, Mr. Seth Andrews. Welcome to the show. Let's start the show.
I just jumped right into that intro. I was like, thanks so much. And I see the graphic come on the screen. So.
Welcome, Seth Andrews.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for letting me play in the sandbox with you. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, just don't eat the sand. That's all. Thanks for joining us, Apostacie, as always.
Yes.
Holy cow, Seth Andrews. So first question, who is Seth Andrews? Oh, sorry. No, that's the next question. The first question is, how are your pets doing? How are all the dogs?
Well, I've got three. I've got Linus, Gracie, and Cat. This is Linus. I see up on the screen with he's got a broken wing there. The short version of a long story is it was my wife's birthday, October 22nd, and we were home. There was a doorbell. They were just a little church hen and her children inviting us to Sunday at their church, which is so fine. Ironic. I mean, they're allowed to do that, but it was an extremely windy day, like a wind advisory day. And it caught this wrought iron front door and it smashed Linus's front left paw, broke 2 bones. And it was the worst. It was just horrible. And so he spent a few months in a cast and we took the cast off about a month ago, and he's been in rehab. The x-ray said a month ago that 1 bone had healed, and tomorrow morning we go in for one final look at the bones, but he's walking like a champ and he's wagging his tail and his eyes are bright and he's back. So everybody's in a good place and they thank you for asking. So
awesome. Well, that's awesome. Good news. Absolutely.
I mean, I am an idiot about my dogs. It's funny because I'm like that little old lady with the 7 chihuahuas. Like I'm speaking to you now and I'm using consonants and I'm trying to articulate my words. And then if Linus or Gracie come up to me for anything, I'm like, oh, you Bobby, we bobbing.
Weirdest thing.
I do. I turn into that little old lady. And I don't know what that is, but I guess it's common. Does anybody else do that?
100%. Every time I see an adorable animal, or just pretty much any animal, you just immediately go to that baby talk. And it's just like, you got to pinch them and squeeze them and hug them. I feel like Elvira. It's terrible.
You're definitely not the only one. That's for sure.
How long have you had Lionel? How old is that?
Let's see. We've had Linus for 4 years, and we got Gracie. Linus is a little Maltipoo, and Gracie is a Shih Tzu. They're both rescues. Gracie, I guess it's been 2.5 years. She's a foster fail. So we were holding her for another member of the family who was coming in from Washington, D.C. And in the month that we were holding her, we fell for her, and
get you.
And it really was kind of fortuitous because it turned out that Gracie is not good with young children. Apparently, was never socialized with children, and the adoptee has 3 young girls. That didn't work out, and we're like, "Oh, that's too bad."
Bummer.
And she's been happily home ever since.
Aw,
yeah,
they're lovely.
They're lovely.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
So I know I have 1 small dog at home, and I can imagine having 3 small dogs at home. So when a doorbell rings, is there chaos at the house?
Well, it's 2 dogs and a cat. The cat is almost a dog.
Raised by dogs, right?
Yeah, they don't know they're small. And I'm walking down the street and I've got 7-pound Linus on a leash, and somebody across the street has like an Australian Shepherd. Massively big dog. Linus doesn't care. Like it's on. He's gonna go and he's gonna mess him up. And he's one of these dogs that he is the most lovey, wonderful dog at the dog park when he's off leash. But there's a phenomenon called leash aggression, where when you put them on a leash, they have a different disposition and become a little more aggressive and protective. And he'll just go. I mean, as that saying is, it's not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog.
Yeah.
Linus will mess you up. He will rain down ankle-high death upon all interlopers, you know.
Land shark is what they call them.
Oh my goodness.
Any more pets in the future? Any more dogs?
No, we're done for. I mean, honestly, we do some work with a local rescue. We'd like to rescue the world, but it's just logistically, it's just too hard right now.
Yeah. Are you the new Bob Barker? Spay and neuter your pets.
Yeah.
So down to the good questions here. Who is Seth Andrews?
Well, I mean, I'm not all that remarkable. I'm just some dude. You know, I was born in Oklahoma to an evangelical family. I mean, hardcore evangelical. And that was my normal Christian school. Everything I did was Christian growing up, Christian friends, Christian music, Christian apparel, Christian culture. And I sort of developed a gift for communication relatively early. I think some of that may have been because my father was lost most of his hearing, and he didn't sign. He just didn't. The stigma about the deaf and sign language, especially decades ago, and so he refused to learn how to sign, and he only read lips. And so we had to articulate and use economy with our words. And I wonder sometimes if maybe his disability caused me to try to shore up my own ability to communicate and try to articulate. I don't know. It's a theory I've had, but I ended up on stage for a Christian school, leading chapel services and being a student leader, student council president. I was a big fan of contemporary Christian music at the time. 70s and 80s. So we're talking early Amy Grant and Michael. And that was a natural segue into Christian radio. I mean, I started as an FM broadcaster in Christian radio at KXOJ 100.9 FM. This was in 19.
Wow.
I spent 12 years in Christian radio, another 2 in pop rock radio, and then I left in 2004 to pursue other things. So, I mean, my life is not all that remarkable, except for the fact that I was really indoctrinated, for the best of reasons. Everybody felt they were doing the right and moral thing, and they wanted to save me from hell and have me enjoy heaven, and they wanted me to know Jesus and all those types of things. But it was a culture that never encouraged us to really do our own thinking, private school and private environments and a very close-knit cocoon. And it wasn't until my mid-30s I finally started to kick the tires, and it's amazing what happens when you start to honestly ask questions, and all the dominoes fell, and here I am today. So that's the short version. That's the Cliff Notes version of me.
Oh, wow. Read this. I actually when I was beginning my process, I was wanting to find everything.
Last year, when she was beginning the process last year.
No, it was 2021.
2021.
You're in a bit ago. Give me more credit.
Am I to understand
She's a baby
that
atheist.
You were just a few years out of the faith?
I am very, very new out.
Wow.
Yes.
I'll bet we walked a lot of the same steps.
You know what? When I read this book, so obviously I did not know who Seth Andrews was. And it was Christmas of 2021 is when it was all coming to a head. And I was going on the library's website trying to find, has anybody been through anything like this? And this book popped up. And just by the name, I was like, oh, okay, so maybe this would be something I could relate to. So I just checked it out and I read it and I couldn't put it down. I would take my boys to tennis twice a week and I would just sit and read for that hour. And I just was like, this book, he knows everything I'm going through. Who is this person? So
I feel like I hear it. Where's my American Express card? I need to pay you for that endorsement. But no, that is.
Did you take that on Amazon?
When you're being transparent and you're telling a story that is so candid, one of the hopes, besides sort of exercising your own demons, right? You want to get it out. You want to have it as a matter of record and clarify it in your own mind. But I also thought, I hope there's anybody else out there that is where I was, and they feel like, oh, I'm not the only one. And so you saying that is the greatest gift you could give me in regard to that book. It it just wells up my heart. So thank you for that.
Well, no, thank you, because this is exactly what I was searching for in that moment. And it really helped me in that process, and didn't know that and then I looked and I thought, oh, he has a show. Well, that's cool. I'll look it up on YouTube. And now look, here we are. So
I am reaching through the virtual space and hugging you and saying thank you
so much.
Because a lot of people, I get a little frustrated with some people who, especially lifelong non-believers or non-fundamentalists, and they'll be like, well, why did it take you so long to figure out this easy question? What kind of an idiot do you have to be? And they're very dismissive. And often they don't understand when we talk about things like trauma, deconversion, trauma, religious trauma, the damage done by health theology, the naming and blaming and shaming of fundy cultures, the reduction of identity. It's funny. I saw a tweet by none other than Eric Hovind, and he said something like, I'm proud to admit that I would be nothing without Jesus. And that's common language in the church, right? There was no one worthy, no, not one. There is a lot of this sort of more of Jesus, less of me language in the church, which is trussed up to sound like love language. It's supposed to be beautiful, but what it really is another example of totalism, which is something that cults do, where you erase the individual identities of people in the cult, and the group identity or the cult leader identity becomes the whole identity. You literally have to surrender all of yourself, and you are represented wholly by someone else. Well, that's Christianity. And it can damage a lot of people. So some of those wounds are probably still raw, but you inspire me. I'm glad that you found your way out. I know life's a journey, but good for you.
Well, thank you.
It's still happening. You're still helping people, man. You helped me like 10 years ago. So I mean, this
Thanks,
is,
man.
You're still doing it. I mean,
wow.
Thank you.
This is like I feel like I'm in a group encourament session here.
I feel like you were at the start of like this movement, this bigger movement online, this bigger movement in the radio and podcast. And I think you were part of that whole starting it and get it going. And really, honestly, that's what helped me. That's what started my show. I mean, I wouldn't have started it unless you guys did what you guys did.
Well, it's funny, when I started in 2009, you're right. There weren't a lot of communicators / storytellers in
not any good ones anyways. Not many good ones.
We had a lot of really smart people, but a lot of and YouTube was a lot bigger for this kind of stuff back then, but it was a lot of PhD types standing in a clinical environment under the fluorescent lights, reading data points. I have become convinced in my life that we won't change the world through data points. I think we change the world through stories, the human stories, by being relatable. There is an aversion by some atheists I know. But this isn't as true anymore, but it used to be like, well, why do you manipulate me emotionally? Let's deal only in logic. And I think that's a total fallacy. I think you should engage all the senses. I think having feelings about the things we think about is perfectly natural, healthy, and even necessary. I think you need emotion to actually come to the proper conclusions logically. I think these things play. I think we do it separately. I don't think emotion leads the train, but I think it's a valid part. So I think we use the stories that we tell to, bring people closer, have them lean in, and that's when the real meaningful conversations can begin. And I kind of came into that space when there was a need for that. And I just wanted to do something, I felt like, how can I contribute? And it's been 14 years. I'm still kicking. So.
You've contributed. Holy cow, have you contributed?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And your shows are still so
relevant.
Even relevant. Thank you. If that's the word I'm looking for, because I'll still listen to shows from like 2009, 2010. And it's like, I don't need them to be just from last week. They'll still pop up and I'm like, oh, perfect. I'll check it out.
What a great topic. Let's listen to that. Yeah.
There were some growing pains back in the day, and the quality on Blog Talk Radio was pretty awful for the first year. And there's I was still fine. Yeah, like I didn't even know podcasts existed until 2009.
You were like pretty new then. So
this is what I wanted to get into, the young version of the podcast. Absolutely.
You take FM radio experience, but you really have to rethink it for the internet space. And I much prefer the internet space. You can go a lot further. You can reach a lot more broadly. You have to take a commercial break every 9 minutes. You don't have consultants breathing down your neck. You don't have to worry about sort of these third parties with the puppet strings controlling you. You can swear as much as you want. It's awesome. It's just amazing.
The only thing you got to worry about is a dog barking at the doorbell.
Yeah, it does.
Oh no, real. Amazon.
Oh yeah,
it does happen.
It's real.
It does for sure. So the early stages of the podcast, what would you do differently, knowing now what you know?
Oh, I think I was able to bring on people smarter than me. And I learned that early. I learned it actually when I was doing radio in actual broadcasting, AM, FM. I mean, I know how to do an interview, right? I've been doing it in audio and video for decades. So, but for me, it was more about the flow of it. When someone you got a caller that's on the air, how much rope do you give them? How long do you let it go on? When do you feel that momentum is going away? If you don't, I didn't have a call screener and still don't. I have a digital screener, an automatic one, but how do you separate someone who's working you and acting and being a troll or a manipulator, just an attention seeker, from someone who's real? And I did a lot of interrupting back then because I was worried about momentum. It took me a few years to really, really learn to relax and trust my instincts a little more. And it's funny because when you do talk type radio with callers, you can have one caller who talks for 90 seconds and you want to stick a screwdriver in your eyeball. Like it feels eternal. There's nothing there. And I'm not insulting them. I'm saying that they are not able to bring to the table a way of communicating, or they didn't bring, they're calling just because they wanted to call, but they're not prepared for the theme or subject at hand, or it is interminable. And yet the call itself is short. People check out. You can then have another caller and talk to them for 25 minutes straight. And people are sitting on the edge of their chairs, and they wouldn't mind if you did another 25 minutes.
Right.
And I got better at really beginning to take that temperature. For what we do, it's all about momentum. Am I losing momentum? Are there too many dead spaces? Is there enough content? Does it relate to the audience? I sort of feeling that out. It took me a few years. And I've gotten better at that. That's probably the big one. Forgive the long answer. I was sort of
that was great.
First time I really thought about it in those terms. I haven't really compared old to new in my brain. But yeah, it's a good question.
I'm curious. I recently went through my older podcast. I'm about 190 right now. So it's like, how did I start? And it's worlds different than where we're at. And I feel I've grown, and it's kind of an evolution of the whole show and everything. So I was kind of curious how your show started and the evolution that you've gone through.
I had a longer show intro back then. I was trying to be way too clever with it. It was like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes long of all these sound bites, and even the one I've got now it runs 55 seconds. And I feel like in a space where there's 900,000 podcasts in the world, that maybe I should shorten that. I've been having that discussion.
It's tough.
Yeah. And another thing that I used to do that I do not do now is I used to meander around at the beginning of a broadcast. I'd be like, here are a few announcements and here's kind of what's going on. But if I've got a themed show, knowing that people have so many options out there, I'm in. The podcast intro finishes. So glad you're here. Oh my God, the guest today is going to be talking about this, and this. Bob, are you there?
Yeah.
And spay and neuter your pets.
I really have learned to kind of streamline that. So, I don't know. It's that kind of thing. Momentum is probably the best word that I would use. I've got.
Yeah, I like that. I like the momentum and the flow. That's really nice. That's amazing. So as far as your intros, I love your beginning part where you have your sponsor. It's usually the learning app of some sort. Wondrium. Yeah.
Yes.
And I love how you integrate whatever you're talking about right into that commercial.
You'd be amazed. Genius, I'm so glad Wondrium's there. What people often don't realize, and I would love to sit people down who are like, you're just a shill for atheism. You are filling your pockets via big atheism. I would like to sit them down and say, okay, I turned down a cruise line advertising campaign. I turned down insurance. I've turned down casinos. I turned down an underwear company. All these people. I know, just because I'm
Did they want you to model? Is that what the problem is?
And it's great underwear. I'm telling you, I'm wearing it now. I just don't want to do the commercials.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I just feel like the second I lose my integrity because I'm shilling for a few short-term dollars on something that I really can't back up, that affects everything I do. But it means I've turned away a lot of potential revenue, and it hurts me. And sometimes I'll tell Natalie about it, and she's just like, oh, I can see literally.
You could have had a free cruise.
You turned down a cruise.
That's what I thought right away. No.
I gotta know. Why did you turn down the cruise?
Well, two reasons. One, I just didn't feel like it was a great fit for what I do. I'm more interested in like the learning stuff, the Blinkist, the audiobook, the short form audio books, the learning sites. I mean, there are some other ones that really relate as well. I ran some ads. I'm running some ads for Sasha Sagan, who's hosting the new Strange Customs broadcast at Only Sky, and that's a good fit.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the real reason, and I didn't say this to my podcast sponsors who brought me the opportunity. The real reason is I've been on one cruise in my life, and I have never been so miserable. We had 2 days of storms.
Oh, no.
I was so unbelievably sick, praying for merciful death to take me.
Oh no.
I'm the most motion sick person I know. And so they're like, oh, it's a cruise ship. It's really big. And this was back in my Christian days when I knew nothing about, like, I was always like, oh, a natural remedy. So someone recommended that we take an herbal motion sickness pill instead of doing the neck patch that they actually recommend that you take for motion sickness. So for 5 days, we take this herbal pill. And of course, it does nothing.
Amazing.
And I spend 2 days in my room retching my guts out. And I told Natalie, I will never get on a cruise ship again, ever. And I don't think I'll ever change my mind on that. But if I do, I'll tell you this much. If I take another cruise, I'm going to grab one of those patches. I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to smoke it. I'm going to mainline whatever is in the neck patch.
You better do it live. You just do it live. Just record it.
It was just awful. It was fly me to the beach. I will be there, but I'm not going to do a boat.
Yeah,
amazing.
That makes
amazing.
sense.
So, anyway.
$5. Believe in Reality says, thanks for all you do, Seth. How did your True Story series start? Oh, good question.
Thank you for that.
Nice job.
The True Stories with Seth Andrews is the second podcast that I launched in August. It just speaks to the storyteller in me. It was a new challenge. I mean, I've been doing the Thinking Atheist podcast and speaking and writing and all that stuff for a long time, and I still love it. But, that's a long time, 13 years or whatever. And I was a fan of a classic, legendary AM radio broadcaster named Paul Harvey. And he was huge for decades. And every weekday he had a feature. It was called The Rest of the Story. And people would stop whatever they were doing during their day just to listen to this 4-minute feature. And it was just a tidbit of something real that happened. Could have been last month, could have been 300 years ago, who knows? And at the end, Paul would have a line at the end that would be a surprise or a shock. You would just pull the rug out from underneath you. And it was amazing. And he did the show all the way until he died in, I think it was 2007. The guy was 90 and he was a broadcaster all the way to the end. And then his son took over. And it was horrible. It was horrible. Paul Harvey Jr. tried his best, but he made a couple of crucial mistakes. One is he wasn't speaking in his own voice. He was trying to be his father, which is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
And two, he talked at people and not to them. He wasn't relatable like his father was, and it was unlistenable. And I had not found anybody who had been doing the short form true story vignette. I mean, I've been looking all over the internet, looking for anybody. And so finally I thought, well, I know how to do this. And so instead of emulate, I'm not trying to sound like Paul Harvey. I don't want to. I've got my own style, my own storytelling thing that I do. But formatically, it's a lot like the rest of the story. They run about between 5 and 8 minutes. Sometimes there's a kicker at the end that makes you go, whoa, I didn't know that. And it's digestible. It's short so that everybody who's already got a ton of podcast subscriptions, they're not, I'm not asking them to chew up a whole lot more of their time. And so it's been good. I mean, we just crossed 225,000 downloads. And
wow.
I got a ping from a local news station because Paul Harvey was born in my hometown. They might be interested in doing a local feature on me.
What?
So cool. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Coming soon to Discovery Channel.
But it's been good. It's nice to talk about something. I mean, again, it's what I do is necessary, and I'm passionate about it. But you can only debunk the book of Genesis so many times. You can only dismantle Noah's Ark so many times. You can only listen to the apologist acrobat so many times. You can only hear the argument from the complexity of the eye, or where do your morals come from, or abiogenesis, or Hitler was an atheist, or irreducible complexity, or evolution is just a theory, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can only do all of those so many hundreds of times before your left eye just starts to twitch. And you're like, I need to talk about something else. So this has been good medicine for me.
Good.
Way.
Nice little outlet. Yeah. A little change. Good.
Yeah, definitely.
So what I want to get into though is early church Seth, before he converted. Is there an embarrassing moment, like something you look back on and you cringe? Something you did or said as a Christian that just I've got a lot. I know I've got a lot. Stacy, I'm going to ask you next.
In a strong field, what story would I tell? Here's one that occurred to me the other day. I was so obnoxious. Like, I was one of those kids that felt like I only listened to Christian music. Maybe a little. I listened to a little bit of Journey in Kansas and stuff, but mostly I was
secular music
of Christian music. And so, I'd be in high school and we'd have open campus and everybody hops in my car and we'd go down to McDonald's for lunch. And I was always cranking up Christian music because it was my way of ministering to everybody in the car. And I was just so obnoxious in that way. So obnoxious. I mean, but I worked when I was 18 as a crew chief. I worked the grill at McDonald's. One of my first jobs was in fast food.
Wow.
And when you close, you have to scrub the grills and you scrub the floors and you scrub all the workstations. And it takes usually 90 minutes to 2 hours to clean the place up. So we'd close at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. And then you're there till 1 o'clock cleaning up. And while you're cleaning up, we had this big boom box that everybody would put up and they'd put on the radio.
Not just a stereo, but a boom box.
This was, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
What was I saying? Oh, boom box. The boom box. Yeah. They had the music back then was stuff like Mr. and Prince and that kind of thing. And I decided I was going to minister. So I brought in a Striper cassette and played Striper for an hour and a half while everybody was scrubbing floors. And I cannot, looking back, I can't believe no one came up to me and said, I don't want to listen to this. I can't believe no one said, why are you playing this? Can we not listen to something everybody wants to hear? Nobody.
I can't believe you played Striper for an hour and a half.
I did. I brought up, I think it was the To Hell with the Devil and Soldiers Under Command cassettes.
I mean, their movie isn't even that long, is it?
It's just, it was just, you know, just that kind of thing. It was so, and it's not even pleasant to listen to.
No,
it's not the kind of thing you can
Stryper.
hum or sing while you're doing your work. And I look back now, and I would like to take all those people that I felt like I was ministering to. I would like to just tell them I am so sorry for being that obnoxious. And I kidded myself. I thought I was doing something meaningful.
Yeah.
Right. I felt like, well, I'm spreading the gospel in a cool way.
Yeah. Did any of them convert though?
I was embarrassing. I was just embarrassing.
Did any of them like just come to Jesus moment after hearing Stryper for an hour and a half?
I think I drove them further away.
Probably. Do you have a favorite Christian band?
Well,
there
is a phenomenon that happens, I think, with most people, where the music of your youth carries with it the ability to conjure specific memories, certain chapters, moments, relationships, things, you know, more than I think when you hear a song for the first time in your 30s and 40s and 50s. If I'm cruising along and I hear, you know, an old song by the Imperials or whatever, it takes me back to the time when I used to, you know, go and browse the cassette aisle at Tulsa Book and Supply. And I was there with my buddy Kel, and Kel played keyboards, and he and I would go hang out together. And he was a dear friend. And so I connected that song to a specific time of my life. And I think a lot of us do this kind of thing. I don't like to listen to Christian music, especially understanding the business of it, especially the praise and worship industry, which I think is pretty much all money.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I still, I mean, I like
you still listen to.
I know I don't. I don't.
Is it Amy Grant? Stephen Curtis Chapman.
I like the sound of Third Day, Mac Powell's voice. Singer of Third Day.
I like Third Day was had a great voice.
You know,
it was song.
It was well produced. They were catchy. They weren't too kitschy at the time. But you know, for every one of them, there were a whole bunch of others that were so saccharine, sticky, sweet that you needed, you know, you had to go on insulin to regulate your blood sugar after you played the song on the radio. And I, you know, I have a hard time with it. Some people, I'll tell you what I've been able to do when it comes to religious music that I can enjoy. I can't do it with contemporary Christian music or that kind of gospel, because I know that the message it's selling is linked to a damaging dogma and an untruth. The one exception I've been able to make where I say, well, I'm going to see this in terms of its context in the song only and enjoy it for what it is in this moment, is Christmas music. Oh, Holy Night. I love the song. The melody of Oh, Holy Night is gorgeous to me. And, you know, and so I don't sit around being all pedantic about, well, there was no whole holy night. You know, in that moment, I'm like, okay, I'll take the journey and enjoy the melody of the song.
It's a great song.
That kind of thing. You know, I don't, but beyond that, I don't listen to Christian music at all anymore. So.
At all? Oh,
no.
No.
Stacy's mom says Stacy and I went to a thrift store this week. They were playing Christian music. She nearly melted. She ran for the door.
I was like, get me out of here.
Why?
I love your
Why
mom.
did you run for the door?
No,
I run for the door
like
because it conjured bad memories, or because you feel like it's all marketing.
Your ears were bleeding.
No,
what was going on?
It felt like it was closing in on me. Well, there was not just the music. It was I said to my mom, is this a Christian thrift store? And she said, yeah, it's called Gleaners. It's like, you know, in the Bible, the gleaners in the field. I was like, oh, okay. And then they had all these posters up for like their mission work, and everywhere I looked, and they had like Jesus signs, and I was just like, okay, I couldn't find what I was looking for, and I just was like, hey, I need to go.
Yeah.
It just felt like it was the first time I had been in that kind of environment in a while. And I just,
I find
different.
a lot of it is there was a grocery store in town that played praise and worship music, and so I'm sitting there over, over next to the cereal boxes and the Propel flavored water, and I'm having to listen to like inspirational music, and I'm just, especially having been there, I was in rooms with the artist, and you'll find some that are absolutely lovely, sincere, true believers who want to change the world. They're convinced that the Bible is true, and they love people, and they are good to their core. Don't be so cynical in the audience. Don't be so cynical to think that all of Christian music is nothing but a bunch of shills and liars. In fact, there were a lot of people that I met. They were disheartened. They were upset because they felt like their industry had become too much about marketing and money, and they wanted to be about ministry. They were legitimately, sincerely good people. But you also see in the green rooms the people who, well, I made it here because I couldn't make it out there in the show, or they're just a bunch of burnouts, or they treat people poorly, or they were raving egomaniacs. And then you began to see, when the big record labels came in the 90s and bought up all the smaller boutique record labels, you began to see that the artists got prettier and slicker, and the budgets got bigger, and the concerts got more polished. And you really see that this is an airbrushed culture that is being sold as much or more than anything else. And that makes it really hard not to just want to walk away. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, when you were a Christian, what was your bookstore, your Christian bookstore? I remember Brian's bookstore was always the thing I went to and found music and whatnot. Was there a specific one you went to get all your stuff?
When I was in high school, there was one local. I mentioned Tulsa Book and Supply. It was just this little sort of family-owned place. There was one called Harmony Music. These days, the big one around here is Lifeway Christian Store. They're kind of a franchise. I think they're owned by a branch of the Southern Baptist Church. I don't know, but I'm amazed at the business of Christian retail. I mean, to walk in, let's say the best incarnation of Jesus exists, and he walks in and is like, "Oh, look, there's me in an oil painting. Oh, look, there's me in an action figure. Oh, look,
hand sanitizer
and the disciples' chess set. Oh, look, there's, it's just, I actually saw, I know it was done for laughs, but it was a Jesus Ouija board. This was like not sold.
What?
I need one.
No, you can go to Amazon, you can buy it. It's like $35. And it's done for laughs, but it's pitched as use this Ouija board to talk to Jesus.
That's awesome.
And I thought it was so funny that I bought one, and I sent it to Matt Dillahunty as a Christmas gift. And I said, "I found a way for you to meet Jesus. Enjoy yourself." I've yet to hear back if any connection has been made in the spirit world.
If you do a Holy Trinity reunion, then you guys should bring the Jesus Ouija board.
Do it live on stage every time. See if it happens. See if it works. Nope, Jesus didn't show up. Guess he's still not real.
Have a Christian seance kind of thing.
I love it. Make sure there's scented candles though, so the room smells nice.
That's hilarious.
That's great.
Will there be a Holy Trinity reunion?
Yes, Stacey, that's
a
very important question.
The unholy Trinity, for those who aren't familiar, was an idea I came up with back in 2012. And I thought, well, Aaron Ron, Matt Dillahunty, and I had become buddies. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be funny if we all toured together, did a speaking tour, and we just called it the Unholy Trinity. And so I put 3 dates together in the States. I can't remember. We had Albuquerque and 2 other cities. I can't remember which ones. And it was big. Everybody had a ball. And then some free thought groups in Australia said, "We want to have you and bring the Unholy Trinity to Australia." So I called the guys and I'm like, "Okay, what do you think about going to the other side of the world?" And they're like, "Okay." So we all got on a plane and we flew, and we did Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. And then we did a reunion in Tulsa. I guess it's been 4 years ago.
Time for a new one.
We started, we became so associated with each other as the Unholy Trinity that it became a little harder for us to do our work individually. I felt like, it was never designed to be like a thing, plus you got three white guys going around representing atheism. And I really a lot of what we do, I think, as individuals, we want to try to. It's not like white guilt. It's not like I'm upset that we're white people, but I think, I just would, if there was an incarnation of that or a group thing, I'd like to see it represent a more diverse atheist movement. Yeah. So there were a lot of reasons that I thought, well,
here's
maybe
Stacey's up for a tour.
I think it's played out. I think it's played out.
Throw a little diversity in there.
But I mean, we still, bump into each other on the road and keep up from time to time.
That's cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Stacey, same question though. I really want to know, what is your most embarrassing Christian moment?
I feel like they're all so embarrassing. Like looking back, like almost every day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that, or I did that, or
I can't believe I said that to that person.
But you know what? I did a lot of my evangelizing over social media, and I got bolder on that, and I was like, oh. That's where I cringed a lot.
Yeah.
But I did have a memory of, it wasn't necessarily my idea, but I do cringe at my last baby shower. So I have 3 boys. And so my youngest turns 4 in April. And the friend who put it on, she's like very Christian. And she wanted to have everyone who was Christian and spirit-filled come and lay hands on me and pray over the baby and everything, and that I'd have a good birth. And so all the Christian people came and laid hands on me, and they were all praying and like speaking in tongues and like prophesying. And all the people who weren't Christian were all sitting there like, what the heck is going on right now?
Is that real language? Should I look at a dictionary?
Yeah. So like it was happening to me, but it was still, when I think back, I'm like, they must have been like, what is going on? This is a strange baby shower. So.
It's interesting too, the presumption in that practice, right? It was totally insular. They weren't thinking there might possibly be somebody with a different faith tradition or none, or if they did think, they didn't care. I had a similar thing happen in our neighborhood. We have a homeowners association, which is what I call the First World Problems Association, because you pay like annual dues for upkeeping the neighborhood, and then people gripe about whose dog is in pooping in somebody else's lawn, kind of deal. But one person goes on and he's up. She's like, we have Christmas lights or holiday lights at the neighborhood entrance, and he said, why did we take the holiday lights down, the Christmas lights down after New Year on January the 1st? Because the day of Epiphany is January, I think it was the 8th. And most people celebrate through the 8th. I'm a Catholic priest. And I'd like to see, and I'm like, well, he was assuming the whole neighborhood is Catholic. Right? In his mind, his faith tradition needed to be projected outward. I'm like, well, I actually jumped into the thread and I said, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that everybody was able to decorate their own individual property however they see fit, according to their own faith traditions, and they could put those lights up or take them down whenever they wanted. Are you assuming that by having this at the actual entrance with the neighborhood sign that we're representing that the whole neighborhood is Catholic? And I got a lot of backup on that. It was interesting to see a lot of people came out and they're like, you're like, oh yeah, good for you. Good.
Nice. That's a good sign. I was expecting a lot of backlash, but that's awesome.
You have to realize, and maybe Stacey knows what this is like, that when you're a devout Protestant Christian, you don't consider a lot of Catholics true Christians.
That's true exactly right.
That's true too.
So we're Christian. He's Catholic. We're a Christian. That's kind of the attitude.
He calls himself a Christian, but he's not really. He's one of those Christians.
Yeah.
Not even Christian.
Right. Misuse of the word. So is there a proudest moment you have as a deconverted Christian?
No, I don't think I could distill it down. I have become very aware. I mean, I feel some sense of accomplishment and the satisfaction that comes with it. When a book goes out and Stacey says it was there for me. And I mean, that is the kind of thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I just want to matter. I think we all feel that. We probably all have an activist nature. Whatever happens in my life, my worst nightmare is to not matter, to be irrelevant. Whatever I do, it doesn't make any difference. And so, if it matters, that's tremendously fulfilling. So, when a speech takes off in the comment section, people are like, oh, that really resonated, or just something dumb happens and they're like, well, I respond to people who have been telling me that they appreciate the kindness in the show. There's so much toxicity out there in the world, and I've just become weary of it. I mean, everybody's chewing each other to ribbons, and there's so much drama and infighting and outfighting and labeling and screaming. And I'm not saying that, sometimes we don't have to go and do battle and draw the hard line and get serious, but the Twitterverse is just nasty by nature, and it starts to kill a part of humanity. So when people listen and watch and read and they say, I thought I would be put off, but I wasn't, and it was because you are kind, or your guest was kind, or the approach was kind. Yeah, that was big. And the kindness of this community has struck me too. I'll just tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
My father passed away a year and a half ago, but my apostasy obviously was a tremendous source of shame for my mother and father, right? I mean, this is their worst nightmare. Yeah. They did everything in their power to make sure that I was going to be a good Christian. I mean, they really committed themselves. And I'm really one of the very few who's left that fold. Everybody else, I can feel it in the room where they have that sort of nauseatingly condescending thing. They don't say it out loud, but the minute I leave the room, they're going, we just need to pray for Seth and show him the love of Jesus.
If only you would have prayed harder, Grandma.
I know that goes on. But our relationship was not good. And we had some very, very hard words, my family and I, over the decade. And then Dad and I reconciled a little bit before he died. But this is before I'd cut my parents off for a couple of years. I just drew a boundary. You do not get to do this. You don't get to call me broken and embarrassment. You don't get to threaten me with hell. You don't get to be this negative force. And after a series of warnings, I drew the hard line. And I was doing a speaking event in Wichita, Kansas. And I was on stage and I did my speech, and we did a Q&A afterward. And there was this lovely little lady named Brenda. And she came out to the lobby when I was at my table afterwards. And she said, I just want you to know that if I was your mother, I would be so very proud of you. And I just started bawling. I'm there in the lobby, and I just started crying uncontrollably. And I reached out and I grabbed her and we hugged, And I have experienced so many of those kinds of amazing moments of kindness and connection. It's the kind of thing that I wish a lot of my religious friends who don't know atheist or don't know they know atheist, they think we're all a bunch of rudderless, purposeless, sad, angry. And the truth is, I think if my mother and father could have seen that moment of true generosity and human connection and this amazingly lovely gesture, I think it would have opened up their perceptions about what it means to be a non-religious human being. So it's a privilege to be able to do what you love, and I'm a privileged guy. So
yeah, that's tough. So
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. No, thank you. Absolutely.
I almost choked myself up telling
I know,
you.
It wouldn't be the first time we got teary out of the show. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Stacey. Go ahead.
Oh, I was actually just going to ask a question about all of the speeches that you give. What's sort of your inspiration for all of them? How long do you take to prepare them? Because I love them. And you just do such a great job with all of them. So.
Matt Dillahunty and I were on a plane to Australia, and I had agonized over his speech. My speeches are, I work them out, and I have like 100 rapid fire slides, and I've practiced things, and I've said it, and then I'll sleep on it and change it the next day, and I work it out, and I'll do it in one city and realize this didn't work and change it. And I'm always massaging it, trying to get it into its perfect form. We're on a plane, and Matt is on the plane. I see him in his laptop, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm writing my speech." And I hate you,
I can't imagine,
because Matt is so innately good at being able to formulate it in his brain and do it,
Right.
that works for him. But I am not that guy. And so what I normally do is I know in my mind kind of what I want to do. In fact, I'm preparing a speech I'm giving at Florida Free Thought and a few other places here later in the year about purity culture. And we get into, the naming and shaming of Christian purity
well, if you
culture.
need any
was that part of your inspiration for your one of your posts today?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
my mom answered. That's okay.
So I fashion my speech as a certain. I don't know if you care how the sausage is made, but I'll kind of show you. Tell you what
I love it. Yeah.
Okay. I always try to take people on a journey, and I try to start with a theme or an idea, a phrase, an image, or something that I will then return to at the end. It's sort of a way to put up bookends over the thing that we're doing. I like to, whenever possible, incorporate a lot of humor. And I don't mean forced humor where you're like yuck, yuck or whatnot, but relatable. In radio, we called it a relate, where you say something and people like, oh God, I've been there. Or wow, that's a surprise. Or that just resonates. And I make sure that the slides support what I say, not vice versa. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who uses slides and they pull one up and there's 500,000 words at 0.002% font. And then they read everything to the audience. They don't want to be read to. People in the audience do not want you to read your speech to them. You just need to have the visual support what you're already doing. And I try to make a lot of eye contact and make it fun. Really, it's just storytelling. And so many people have come out of this. Even people who weren't hugely religious are still impacted in a lot of ways by sexual shaming, especially women who have been sort of designated the gatekeepers of sexual. And men, boys, they've been taught a lot of terrible things about sex and their own sexual identity. And so in the speech, I start out with a question. And I walk out and I'm gonna say, all right, everybody, who was your first kiss? Everybody's got a story. And it's amazing, or it was horrible, or it was awkward, it was weird, it's confusing. I don't care what your story is, everybody's got a story. And that's my way in, right? Because I've already hit you at a place where you live. I've already found a place of common ground. I've already got you smiling or wincing. I've already got you taking what we're about to do personally. And that opens the door for us to get into some really meaningful conversations about the tactics that they use, the bad doctrines, how sexual shaming is used to control people. I mean, if you control somebody's sexuality, you've got them. You got their whole life. You got their careers. You've got their partners. You've got how they frame their family. You've got all of them. And so the whole speech is designed really as a dismantling of how these cultures, even the best meaning cultures, really damage people, and why people should, be themselves, be free. You don't have to live under the mantle of shame. It's an amazing part of being a human being. And I try to leave them with a word of encouragement. I don't know. We'll see. I'm giving it in March, and
I can't wait to hear it.
I'm excited to hear it.
I'll tour with it for a series of months, and then everything eventually, when I retire it, it'll go to YouTube. So it will eventually end up online, I promise.
Perfect. Well, I look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I don't understand is why they think it works. Like, it obviously doesn't work. I know from my experience, my youth group, every woman was pregnant. Every
No.
Teenager
That's right.
got
the
pregnant.
Bible belt is also the teen pregnancy belt is also the porn belt is also.
Oh, it works for me.
You got one. You got one.
But not in the best. Like, it wasn't like I'm like, oh yes, it's great. It was not, but it's
repression cultures just don't work. I mean, why in the world is repressive and overwhelmingly Mormon Utah number 2 in the country for downloading porn? It's because people who are being denied all of these things, the forbidden fruit, are sneaking off into their dark inner rooms and doing what they really wanted to do in the first place. But often they're doing it in ways that have been distorted through the guilt and shame of their religions. And that's a whole other conversation. But I mean, you're right. It does not work.
No.
And beyond that, it harms people.
Yes.
Even the people who actually wait to get married to have sex carry a tremendous amount of bad.
That's what I meant. Like, that's what I meant.
Oh yeah.
A lot of shame. And
oh man, ridiculous.
That's a whole other show, but that's what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about? We got 6 minutes.
And if you say Seth will be speaking at 10 in the morning, people are like, oh God, it's 10 in the morning. I got to be there at 10. But then if you say you'll be speaking about sex, then people are going to actually get up and come and be in the audience.
Oh,
I think I'll have some coffee.
Enjoy. Yeah, I remember that from church.
Somebody say sex?
Yeah, somebody said so. I'll be there. I'll be there early. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
One other question. Sorry, Michael.
No, you got to go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
We wanted to know, because you've talked about Natalie. She's a theist, correct?
I would call her a deist. She was raised in a Christian faith tradition, but she's kind of a 31 flavors. I mean, she doesn't practice a faith. She doesn't pray, any of that stuff. But she kind of like, I think she believes that we go on in some way.
That's what I wanted to know.
What makes it's not always easy. What makes it kind of hard sometimes is that I'm an activist nature. Yeah, I'm a crusader and she is very much not. So if she meets somebody who's a Buddhist, or she meets somebody over here who's a Mormon, or she meets somebody who's a Muslim, or she meets somebody who's a spiritualist or whatever, her arms are open and she's like, if it makes you happy, that's great. And I'm one of those people who's gone deeper, and I'm like, well, that's true to a point. And then when we start getting into selling non-truths and embracing things that are not just unsubstantiated but harmful, and then there are the people who are selling these messages to the tune of millions of dollars and all these other things. So I tend to be I take a harder line on it,
right?
And our difference in temperament sometimes becomes a challenge. But no, I mean, she's not religious in the sense I would call it religious, but I would say if she's anything, she's spiritual.
Right. Okay.
Not dragging you to church spiritual. So that's good. You don't have to worry about that. Stacy's mom, as a new atheist who has a son who has been living in like hell is he well, I missed something. Stacey, go ahead.
Okay. So as a new atheist who has a son who has been living like hell his entire life, now his sister, me, and my mom are out as atheists. He's angry. Have you seen anything like this before?
What do you mean living like hell? I'm not sure.
So what that means is basically he never was interested in church. He's done his own thing his whole life. Never interested in God. Nothing. Now he's really mad at us.
He's mad at you for what? Leaving the church?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's disinterested in the church, but he is interested in a negative way that you left the church.
Yes.
That's interesting. I don't get that. I'm not making that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you seen that before?
I don't know if I've seen anybody disconnected from religion who was angry at a family member who had left religion. I'm not a psychologist, but in my mind, it sounds to me, if we were talking over coffee, I think there are probably a lot of layers under that onion that may have nothing to do with religion.
Yeah.
There may be some relational things going on. There may be some other issues that are at play. It's ultimately, if I was to sit this person down though and have a conversation, I think everyone deserves an authentic life. Everyone deserves the right to take their own journey, including your brother. And so if at the end of the day, you and your mom say, well, I don't see any evidence that this is true, and I see a lot of evidence that it's not, and therefore I feel like the right thing, the honest thing to do is to not do that. Let's go over here and let's try a better way. You are working to live authentically. And that is something that people should celebrate. No one should be threatened by it. No one should be angered by it. And beyond that, if there was a worthy, benevolent, all-loving God that existed, that God would reward anyone who was doing their best, trying their best to be their best. And so I would like to see that reframed as we're on a journey. We're trying to figure it out. We're unconvinced over here that this is true. We think that we may have been sold a bill of goods, and we're going to keep asking questions. And if God shows up tomorrow, we would want to know that. That's a whole other series of conversations. But ultimately, you know, everyone's life is their own to live. And that's true for me, and it's true for you. And I think that's perhaps a non-threatening way to approach the journey that you're on, just reminding this person that it's your journey, and we all have a right to take our own journey on our own terms.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. That helps.
For what it's worth. For what it's worth. I mean,
yes.
I'm not Yoda, but I really think, you know, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is an authentic life. I don't know how many times I've seen people and they're like, well, I don't want to rock the boat, or I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And yet everybody around them gets to be who they are at full volume without apology. And the one person in the room who's sitting on their hands keeping the peace is somebody like us. And I'm like, well, that's not real peace. No. What you've got is an absence of conflict, but that's not peace. Yeah. I was at are we going long? I don't want to
keep going. Yeah. Go
ahead. Do you have 3
We're
minutes?
good as long as you're good.
Yes.
No, forgive me if you've heard this story. If you listen to my show, you may have heard this one, but some in your audience may not know it. It takes me 3 minutes to tell the story. A cousin from Chicago I hadn't seen in 15 years was in town, and so my younger sister said, "Hey, we're going to have Sue over with her husband Mark, and would you like to come see her and catch up?" Okay, that sounds amazing. So we're all sitting at the table, and Sue was going around the table asking everybody kind of what they did. What do you do? What do you do for a living? And I'm sitting in this chair going, oh God, you know, because there'd been so much conflict, and my mother and father are right there. They don't want me to even say the word atheist out loud. They're totally embarrassed. It was going to be a nightmare. And so as they're coming around to me, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I do not want this to be another argument. I don't want to be another blow up. I did not come here for this. And so Sue comes to me and I said, well, I'm an online podcaster and broadcaster. And then I awkwardly segued to the person next to me. I didn't give any details, and I could tell she wasn't satisfied. So second later, she comes back and she says, well, what's your podcast about? And my parents are sitting over there, and I'm like, oh God. And I'm totally done. Well, we deal with religions and religious issues on the show. And I segue, and I know she's still not satisfied. And she's going to come back to me. And in that moment, I had an epiphany, and I thought, everybody else at this table has unapologetically been talking about what they do and what they love and what their values are. They're not sitting on their hands. They're not worried about keeping peace. They get to be everything they want to be authentically. I'm the only one here who's sitting on his hands and trying not to ruffle feathers. And I realized at that moment that I'm not here on this earth to keep everybody else comfortable. And I deserve an authentic life just like they do. And so Sue came back to me and she said, "No, I want to know more about this show that you do. What exactly is it?" And I looked her in the eye and I said, "I host the most popular atheist podcast in the world." And there was silence.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
And I was waiting for my mother to flip out and break into tears and my father to get mad. I was waiting for it. And none of that happened. And the moment passed. Okay. Well, she went back to Chicago, but she sent me an email. Sue did. And she said, "So my husband is coming out of the Catholic Church, but he's been very dissatisfied and he's on a journey. And I've been reading your book." So that means that on the way back to Chicago, she ordered my book, Deconverted, and was reading it. She said, "Can I give Mark your phone number so that you guys could kind of talk a little bit?" And I'm like, yes, give him my phone number, right? And he and I started a series of conversations. He was deconstructing. He was going through doubts and dissatisfaction. He was deconstructing. And had I not been my authentic self, I would have never known that he was on a journey, or that I might be able to encourage him on his journey.
Wow.
And I've never forgotten that day. And that's my shtick with everybody. You know,
Yeah.
I know sometimes you got to play chess, not checkers. I know sometimes there's a cost benefit on how much pain you want to put yourself through with family and friends and jobs and supervisors and cultures and neighbors. But the goal is you deserve an authentic life. That's the end zone. Life's too short to keep other people comfortable. Be so you at the volume that you want to be without apology. That's the goal. That's the goal. So.
Love it.
Wow.
Great advice, Seth. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do have one question that we tend to ask before we go here. Why do you hate God and worship Satan?
Well, God, God.
Perfect.
That's funny. I hear that from time to time.
All the time.
That's why we ask.
God? I also hear this one. I heard it 3 times this week. Why do you talk about a God you don't believe in?
Yes. Oh, gods.
Which is like, well, I didn't start this conversation.
Yes.
People running God down my throat are the ones who started the
That is it. I did not start this conversation. Nice job. Nice job.
Another thing I like to do just as an exercise, I just do it just because it's funny, is I think it's is it 9 or 11 tenets of the Satanic Temple, which is a totally secular organization run by a buddy of mine named Lucian Greaves.
Yes.
And if you read, they are essentially humanist values about treating people well. Okay. You read those and you say, do you agree with those? And the Christian says, yeah, I agree with that. Congratulations, you just agreed with the 9 tenets of the Satan.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I love that.
That reminds me of when you read people's stories from the Bible, but disguise it as kind of the Quran.
Yeah.
And then say, that's actually
those
from
are awesome.
Did you know that the Muslim general Jephthah asked Allah for victory in battle? And in exchange, burned his daughter on the altar, and the smoke went up to please the nostrils of Allah. That's barbaric. Well, actually, no, that's in the Christian Old Testament. And Jephthah was the servant of Yahweh. And you just watch their heads literally melt like a candle off of their neck. It's amazing.
It's great.
It is amazing.
Perfect.
Love it. Yeah. Seth, thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for stopping by and all your answers and questions. Stacy, go ahead and take us out in prayer.
Could you please fire? I can't speak. It's sad. I can't. It's our little joke, but I can't do it with that. I'm sorry.
Can't do it.
I can't.
That's how we do the patrons.
Joke, but no, I can't do it tonight.
I sound like a preacher. Like
joking.
Some people have said I have a preacher prayer kind of a vibe, and I don't
do
know
it. Maybe Seth can do the
no,
patrons
no,
tonight.
I can't. No. Okay. Well, thank you, Seth. And I also want to thank our patrons, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Deborah Grace, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Seth, where can we find you? We all know probably.
Nobody's ever heard of you before.
Where can we find you?
Look, I'm honored just to be here. If somebody wants to know more about the show, you can just go to thethinkingatheist.com or sethandrews.com, and all the links and everything are there. But
and buy his book.
Buy that book. And that book, and that book. And
there's a pop-up section, there's crosswords, there's colors. You can color,
I love
stuff in there. And so it's
you didn't tell me you had a coloring book. I'm totally buying it now.
I'm just saying. So no. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you and your show and the work that you're doing. And Stacy, hug your mom for me, and you guys.
I will.
Let's do it again.
She'll be so happy.
And your brother.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here too, and this was awesome. Dream come true.
Don't forget to spay and neuter your pets.
Yeah.
That's all the show we have.